And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
One of the themes that I'm a big sucker for is the Old West, and any game that uses that genre. It's just something that I enjoy quite a bit, and so this game Homesteaders was one that appealed to me. But when I first saw it, I thought, yet another Euro. I like Euro games, I like the mechanics, but the ideas of them sometimes are overwrought and overdrawn. Homesteaders does not do this. In fact, this is a game where they take the basic components of the game and bring it down to something that I really enjoy, something that I find absolutely fun, and they do it in a quick time. Homesteaders is a meaty game in an hour. But, be that as it may, let me show you for yourself. As you just saw, the game comes with a lot of different resources. There's gold, and there's steel, and there's wood, and there's vegetables, and trading tokens, and workers, and cows. But at the beginning of the game, this is what you get. You get just your homestead, and one worker, and some money. And what you've got to do is you got to change that into victory points. Victory points are won through having some of the more valuable resources, but they're mostly won through buildings. And you can see this building here is worth 0, but you can get buildings that are worth more than that over the course of the game. The game is going to revolve around auctions. Now, before you run away screaming, I know that there's a lot of people who don't like auctions, but these aren't bad, and they really aren't that big of a deal in this game. There's 3 auctions going on in a 4-player game. If there's less than 4 players, this third auction doesn't happen. But auctions are done in one of my favorite styles of auctioning, and when it's your turn, you place a marker of your color on however much you're willing to pay. So for example, on auction 2, I'm willing to pay $4, so I put my token there. If a player outbids you, you can then take your token off, and you can place it somewhere else. You know, you can eventually outbid one another until there's only one person on each auction, and one person is not going to win an auction. That's just how this game is going to work. But that person then gets to move another cube that they have along the railroad developmental track, and they will get a resource. And they've saved money because they haven't paid for the auction. So just because you haven't won an auction is not the end-all be-all. Now, what do these auctions let you do? This one here lets you buy a residential or commercial building. This one lets you buy just a residential building. This one lets you buy an industrial building. The auctions also do other things. In fact, whoever wins the first auction also gets the coveted start player token, which could and very much be a big deal. You then can come over here and buy, these aren't all the buildings, there's actually quite a few buildings included in the game, but here's some of the example of our different buildings that you have available at any point in time. The game has 3 eras: settlement, town, and city. In the first 5 rounds, you can only buy settlement buildings, and then the next several rounds you can only buy town buildings, and then in rounds 9 and 10 you can buy city buildings. And in fact, at that point in time, another type of building will show up called special buildings, like for example the fairgrounds. Each of these buildings is really easily figured out what they do. I already mentioned the victory points on buildings, and some buildings are going to be worth no victory points, but that's because they're more useful. There's a cost to the buildings, so for example, to build a steel mill, I need 2 wood and a gold coin, which I don't have at this point in time, but let's say I did, I could then build it. And then at the bottom, and sometimes in the middle there's a special ability of the building, but at the bottom is the income of the building. Now, most buildings require a worker. This is done before auctions. At the beginning of each player's turn, player look at all their buildings, and they can put a worker on that building to get them a specific resource. So I could put a worker on here to get me an iron, while this one here simply gives me an iron. But this one's much more expensive, so which one do I want? This one here I can get a brick. Down here I can get a worker to either get a trade token and $2 or to get an apple. This one here gives me an apple no matter what. And there's different buildings, and so for a while you're going to go around and look at all the different buildings that are available. And as time goes by, these buildings will get better and better. In fact, near the end of the game, let's show you one here for example. The church, you can see that their victory points go up substantially, and this one here gives you 2 victory points as income. course, to have this one, you need 1 wood, 1 steel, 1 gold coin, and 1 brick. And you also need to win the auction to get it. That's it. Each turn, you assign your workers. You pay money for your workers that you have. You get the resources that they bring you, and you use those resources after you win an auction, or lose an auction, I guess, to build more buildings, and you keep going on. And after 10 auctions and 10 turns, whoever has the most points is the winner. Now, you may have looked at some of these tiles, may have seen them. The production of Homesteaders is not the top of the line, and that's because the company had a lot of problems with the person who made their game. They are now using the same person to make their games as Pandemic. So future games will be better. But yes, a lot of tiles were off center. It wasn't too terrible, but it was noticeable. While the wooden components were fantastic. I love all those different pieces. That really adds to the theme of the game. But what I really like about this game is the fact that it plays in about 45 minutes. Yeah, maybe an hour and even an hour and a half when you have new players playing, because the buildings, they don't know all the different kinds of buildings. But once you know what you're doing, this is a game that plays very quickly. And even though auctions are in it, and the auctions do matter, it's not all about the auctions. You get those auctions to build the building that you need. And you got to know sometimes when to walk away from an auction and take the money or take the extra resource. And it's just fascinating, different kinds of strategies. Yes, like many of these buildings, it's all about getting the best. I mean, in many of these games, it's like getting the best buildings after the game is over. Going for those buildings at the end. That is certainly one of the features of this game, but because it's only 4 or 5 minutes, I love that part of it. I love trying to, build up your things. And you can find out that you're losing 75% of the game, and there's really no way to come back from it. But it's a short game, but very meaty. I very much like this game. It's the kind of Euro game that I tend to enjoy, where you build things up with a nice theme. That of the Homesteaders, the Old West, I guess. I like that idea, and I like auctions when done in moderation, and this one does auctions right.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.